27 Facts about Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was adopted. His biological father was Abdul Fattah John Dali, a Syrian Muslim. Steve Jobs never wrote a single line of programming code. Steve Jobs was dyslexic. Every Apple iPhone ad displays the time as 9:41 a.m., the time Steve Jobs unveiled it in 2007. Steve Jobs was awarded 141 new patents since his death. When the first prototype of Apple's iPod was shown to Steve Jobs, he dropped it in an aquarium and used the air bubbles to prove there was empty space and it could be made smaller. A secretary once told Steve Jobs she was late for work because her car wouldn't start. That afternoon, Jobs threw her a set of keys for a brand new Jaguar, saying, "Here, don't be late anymore." Steve Jobs believed that his vegan diet would eliminate the need of showering. The Bible, Steve Jobs' bio, and The Hunger Games are the most highlighted Kindle books ever. Abraham Lincoln, Walt Disney, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, and Steve Jobs, all of them had no college degree. Bill Gates wrote rival Steve Jobs a letter as he was dying. He kept it by his bed. Steve Jobs turned down a partial liver transplant from now Apple CEO Tim Cook 2 years before dying of cancer. Steve Jobs denied paternity on his first child, Lisa, claiming he was sterile. Steve Jobs once called Google to tell them the yellow gradient in the second O of their logo wasn't quite right. Steve Jobs is buried in an unmarked grave. When Steve Jobs accused Bill Gates of stealing from Apple, Gates said, "I think it's more like we both had this rich neighbor named Xerox and I broke into his house to steal the TV set and found out that you had already stolen it." When Apple began designating employee numbers, Steve Jobs was offended that Wozniak received number 1 while he got number 2. He believed he should be second to no one, so he took number 0 instead. A rare Apple I computer built in Steve Jobs' garage in the summer of 1976 was sold at an auction in 2014 for $905,000. Steve Jobs did not let his kids use iPads and limited their use of technology to a minimum. Steve Jobs claimed that taking LSD was a profound experience, one of the most important things in his life. Ashton Kutcher tried Steve Jobs' fruitarian diet when getting into character for the Jobs movie and ended up in the hospital because it messed up his pancreas levels. Steve Jobs' last words were "Oh wow. Oh wow. Oh wow." As a teenager, Steve Jobs traveled to India to seek enlightenment and returned as a Buddhist. Before co-founding Apple, Steve Jobs worked for Atari. Steve Jobs used to withdraw just $1 as his annual salary from Apple's account as CEO. Steve Jobs was infamous for parking his Mercedes in handicap parking spots. He also didn't use license plates. Steve Jobs was scared of buttons.